All right, everybody, welcome back. We are going to go ahead and write body number 1 together. You already filled out the majority of this on your own. Everything I have on the screen so far, you have filled out. The only additional thing that you would have is you have this blank. It should no longer be blank because from the previous video, you would have known that you needed to fill that in, either based on Google or something from the passages that we have read. Either way, this one should be filled in. That being said, we are going to go through and fill in all of these blanks. We're going to type our analysis together for both of these quotes, just so you can use this video as a model for how eventually you would be expected to approach body number 2. But in this video, we are just going to work with body number 1. So starting from the beginning, I have the lottery open on another tab. So please just make sure that you have the lottery open as well on another tab. I'm not really sure if the video is going to allow me to show you that tab once I switch over. Either way, I will still fill you in on what I'm doing. So it says, in both The Lottery by Shirley Jackson and Disney's Encanto, tradition pushes characters to conform. Conformity is, and then whatever you have there. Our focus here is how traditions are what drives the characters to conform or be like everybody else, do what everybody else says, not really have their own voice or their own opinion. Okay. That is very, very prevalent in The Lottery and extremely prevalent in Encanto. Two very different ways. But one thing I want us to consider in The Lottery is where we're getting to. In The Lottery, think about who is the main person who blindly follows the lottery, like the tradition of the lottery. Who is telling other people this is a good thing? Shame on you for believing that we should change. There's one dominant character that continues to tell people, hey, why are we questioning this? Even if people start to, which really nobody does, they are continuing to gripe about it. If you're thinking in your head that it's Old Man Warner, you are absolutely correct. So we're going to fill that space in. So in the lottery, Old Man Warner, and we're going to capitalize all that because they tell us that's his name. Old Man Warner says, that would be our quote introduction or who is talking. And then now we need to pull something of what he's telling us. There is a part in the story, again, if I try to switch over to the other tab, you won't be able to see it, but I am just going to tell you in paragraph 32, I believe it is, and I'll double check that before putting that number in there. In paragraph 32, Old Man Warner continues to tell everybody there's always been a lottery. He's frustrated that other people are questioning if they should have a lottery. He doesn't like that other towns are deciding to change what they're doing. He doesn't like that they're saying, oh, we don't need lotteries anymore. Yeah, 2 or 3 towns over, they don't even do lotteries. And Old Man Warner thinks that that's nonsense. He does not seem to understand. He's like, there's always been a lottery. Why would we change it? There's nothing wrong with the way we do things here. He's kind of very negative in that sense. He fully believes without question that this is what the community should be doing. Keep in mind, in your head, you may be able to remember exactly how many years he says he's been in the lottery. I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to pause so you can think, or maybe you can go back in the text. But if you said 77 years, you would be correct. Now, I don't know if they mean to tell us that Old Man Warner is 77 or if they're just saying this is his 77th year participating. I don't really know how a baby would be able to participate, but maybe he was. I'm not really sure. Clearly, they gave the kids some pebbles and some rocks. So anything can happen because, again, this is fiction. So we are just going to continue with our analysis. One thing you'll notice that our analysis says 2 or more sentences. This is really, really, really important. It would be so difficult to explain what we mean and fully answer the prompt or answer what we're supposed to be talking about, which would be how in the lottery tradition pushes characters to conform. That's impossible for even your teachers to explain in 1 sentence. An analysis needs to be 2 sentences, but what I don't want you to think is that it only has to be 2 sentences. It can and really should be more than 2. If you think about if you were to try to verbally explain something to someone, if you only got 2 sentences to explain it, they'd probably have more questions. So I'm telling you in advance that our explanation, our analysis that I'm about to give you is probably going to be a little bit more than that because it's well thought out. Okay. So going back, in the lottery, Old Man Warner says there's always been a lottery. So we could say this statement reflects the community's pressure to conform based on tradition rather than reason. Notice how Old Man Warner isn't like offering up an explanation. He just says, well, we've always done it. He's not able to say, this is why we do it, and this is why we do it, and this is why we should keep doing it. Yes, he says lottery in June, Cornby, I think he says heavy soon. But even though that's his reasoning, they've never tested out the theory that, like, what if we just didn't have a lottery one year? I could totally understand in this community if they chose to not have a lottery and then all of a sudden their crops didn't grow. But they've never even gambled that chance. And I'm going to use the word gamble because we've got a lottery. They are gambling with the option or with the chance that maybe they don't have a good harvest season, but nobody's even questioning that. So the statement reflects the community's pressure to conform based on tradition rather than reason. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next sentence. If you need to pause, if this is too quick for you, feel free to do that, but I'm going to keep going. So, Old Man Warner, we could say, again, we're capitalizing all of that because that's his name. He is continuously, that means he does not stop, reminding people how this is his 77th lottery. He's like bragging that this is his 77th year in the lottery and how how the lottery's been going on since even before he was born. That is his like bragging right. So we could say Old Man Warner is continuously reminding people how this is his 77th year in the lottery and how let's say the tradition has been going on since before he was even born. Okay. This just again shows us like maybe Old Man Warner, who seems to be the most interested in the tradition, doesn't even fully understand the tradition. We could say, because we need to bring it back to conformity. So far, we haven't mentioned conformity at all. So far, we haven't mentioned everybody just following along. So we need to still make sure that we're doing that so that we've come full circle back to our original purpose, which is showing how those characters conform, how they do what everybody else is doing because they're being told that they should. So we could say this proves, notice how we're on our third sentence, that the townspeople, sorry, I cannot spell today, the townspeople's blind acceptance of this tradition is because they follow the ritual out of habit. Again, I told you I can't spell today. Ritual out of habit and fear of change. Think about what that means. These people are afraid. They are scared. So what they're willing to do is sacrifice somebody. They are willing to not really think. They all have the same fully functioning brains that the rest of us do. And for some reason, us as the readers not living in this community can think so clearly that this is wrong. But none of them are thinking it's clear. And even if they are, they're staying quiet because the second that they mention anything, Old Man Warner is yelling at them saying that they're wrong. So they are afraid of change. And we could say this ultimately leads to Tessie's tragic death at the end of the story. No matter what, her death is tragic. Think about what could have happened. So I want us to think of like the if then. So had someone thought to question the origin or like where the tradition came from, so we could say question the origin of this tradition, many lives, not just Tessie, could have been spared. We could even say over the years. Keep in mind, this tradition, like Old Man Warner says, has been going on for more than 77 years. That means 77 lives at minimum have been sacrificed or have been used as a way of getting out of the inevitable that maybe we just don't have a good harvest season this year. That's so crazy. Keep in mind, like, this is just, they truly believe this and this is how they're thinking. So if I read this from start to finish so far of what we have, we could say, actually, we have said, in both The Lottery by Shirley Jackson and Disney's Encanto, tradition pushes characters to conform. Conformity is, and then whatever definition you have. In The Lottery, Old Man Warner says, there's always been a lottery. This statement reflects the community's pressure to conform based on tradition rather than reason. Old Man Warner's continuously reminding people how this is his 77th year in the lottery and how the tradition has been going on since before he was born. This proves that the townspeople's blind acceptance of the tradition is because they follow the ritual out of habit and fear of change. This ultimately leads to Tessie's tragic death at the end of the story. Had someone thought to question the origin of the tradition, many lives could have been spared over the years. Now we're getting into Disney's Encanto. So we're still talking about how tradition forces characters to conform, but we are switching gears. So again, we already talked about who the main person pushing the lottery on people was, Old Man Warner. Think about who the main person pushing the tradition on the family in Encanto. If you're thinking that it's Abuela Alma, you're absolutely correct. So we could say in Disney's Encanto, Abuela Alma puts pressure on the family to uphold tradition when she says, and then for this one, I kind of had to think a little bit extra. I don't know about you, but I don't have every single quote from the movie thought through. I don't have it all memorized. So I did go back to Google and I just did a quick search of quotes where Abuela talks about tradition. And one that I found, again, in a quick Google search, you also may have written this quote down. I noticed that on some of your note sheets that were the yellow papers that we gave you, that you had some quotes. Some of you were very, very specific, which I really, really liked. And I actually even used some of those when referencing how we should be writing this. So thank you to those of you that were very detailed in your yellow sheet. But we could say the quote that I found from Google was, "The magic is strong, and so are the traditions that keep us together." So the reason why this is important, again, we also have Bush and Howard 2021, and then I needed to add that period at the end of that because that is very important, as we had it up here with Jackson 32. We don't need to find the specific timestamp because, again, that's unrealistic in a movie or a film, because that would be way too long and way too much research to be doing. So it is okay for us to just cite the movie that it came from, okay? Which again, from last time, that would be like our director and our producer, and then the year that the movie came out, which is 2021. What we can talk about here, which again, as you notice, this was more than 2 sentences. This was like, I think 4 up here. We will probably have to do more than 2 sentences. We just don't want to have less than that. If we think about it, Abuela Alma puts pressure on the family to uphold tradition when she says, "The magic is strong, and so are the traditions that keep us together." Now, the first time you hear that, you may be thinking what a lot of people are thinking, that that sounds like a very positive statement to be made. It sounds like Abuela is complimenting the family and talking about how they all stay together, they all agree, they all are so good to each other. They're such a strong, tight-knit family, and the magic is good and the tradition is good, and we should celebrate that. But what I want you to think about is this is kind of a backhanded compliment that Abuela is making or giving. The magic is strong, and so are the traditions that keep us together. That makes me feel like Abuela is saying that if the magic didn't exist, our family would fall apart. And if you watched the movie, so you probably believe that too. The magic is strong, and so are the traditions that keep us together. Think about how nobody wants to disappoint Abuela. Nobody wants to disappoint her and make her feel like they don't appreciate their gifts and the traditions. So the one person that's doing that, which is Mirabelle, Abuela is not very happy with her. She scolds her and she makes her feel bad for questioning. So we want to point that out, how even though this quote seems positive whenever you first hear it or read it, it really isn't. It's that backhanded compliment from Abuela that she doesn't even realize. So we could say, while this may seem like Abuela is complimenting, we're just putting into words what we were just saying, complimenting the family, she is actually stating that the family would be nothing without the magic. She is implying, I don't know how to spell, I am so sorry, implying that the family, we've already said all of this, we've just verbalized it, now we're putting it into words. She is implying that the family would fall apart if they did not have the traditions where each member gets a gift. Again, that's also why her and Mirabelle don't agree. Mirabelle doesn't get a gift, and we don't really understand why, obviously, until we get to the end of the movie. But what Abuela does not see is that her harshness and how she's approaching everybody in the family around the importance of the tradition is actually ripping her family apart. She's preaching about how her family should be staying together and they need to not question things and it's Mirabelle's fault. And she gets to a point of actually scolding her. So Mirabelle, I think I spelled that wrong. Mirabelle gets scolded or lectured for questioning the traditions which cause others to, we could say, feel forced to conform to keep the family together. Now let's talk for a second. Maybe if you have siblings, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't have, actually I need to change this to which causes. Maybe if you have siblings, you'll understand this. Maybe if you don't, maybe you can think of cousins. But I know that when I was a kid and my sister would make my mom or my dad upset, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't also making them upset, so I wouldn't do the thing that my sister would have done. That's in the same case. The rest of the family members see how defensive and upset and frustrated Abuela Alma is getting with Mirabelle, that they all want to make sure that they're kind of making up for Mirabelle's mistakes, that they are making sure that Abuela knows that they're thankful and that the Encanto knows that they appreciate the gifts and all the other things. Now, that being said, we're not finished here. We want to continue and just make one final sentence because we need to bring it back to how this is a negative thing. We need to really drive that home if we haven't already. So this shows the negative, because we want to make it clear that we think this is negative, effects of strict expectations on family dynamics and personal well-being. What that means and why I'm wording it that way is because Abuela's not really considering what's really best for the family. What's best for the family is if everybody was happy. And that's what we're going to get into paragraph 2 when we get there, is that the family's not happy and that they're making sacrifices to make Abuela happy. Because they do believe, because she's telling them to believe, that if we didn't have this magic, we would have nothing. We would be nothing. That's so harsh. And it's important to have high expectations, but not to the point where they're so strict, which I'm also remembering I just spelled that wrong. Strict, not script. So strict that your family's unhappy. And Abuela almost making them think that they're happy when they're really not. So I'm going to go through from start to finish. Obviously, we're still going to have this blank because you filled in whatever you put there. But I'm going to read this all the way through, and we should be pretty proud of this paragraph that we've come up with. So, in both The Lottery by Shirley Jackson and Disney's Encanto, tradition pushes characters to conform. Conformity is, again, whatever you have there is fine. In The Lottery, Old Man Warner says, "There's always been a lottery." The statement reflects the community's pressure to conform based on tradition rather than reason. Old Man Warner is continuously reminding people how this is his 77th year in the lottery and how the tradition has been going on since before he was even born. This proves that the townspeople's blind acceptance of this tradition is because they follow the ritual out of habit and fear of change. This ultimately leads to Tessie's tragic death at the end of the story. Had someone thought to question the origin of this tradition, many lives could have been spared over the years. In Disney's Encanto, Abuela Alma puts pressure on the family to uphold tradition when she says, "The magic is strong, and so are the traditions that keep us together." While this may seem like Abuela is complimenting the family, she's actually stating that the family would be nothing without the magic. She is implying that the family would fall apart if they didn't have the tradition where each member gets a gift. What Abuela does not see is that her harshness around the importance of the tradition is actually, that we should say ripping, I'm glad I reread this, ripping her family apart. Mirabelle gets scolded for questioning the traditions, which causes others to feel forced to conform to keep the family together. This shows the negative effects of strict expectations on family dynamics and personal well-being. Both stories show how conforming to a group, while easier, can have negative results. So we are finished with body number 1. Again, I'm really, really worried. I'm really hoping we're filling in this blank. I know some of you still don't have this because I've looked at your screens, but please make sure that gets done because that's a really big part of getting your points besides just having everything that we've just come up with. There will be another video to help you with body number 2, but I am going to tell you I am pulling back significantly on this. I'm going to give you another video that goes through the different options of what you could talk about here. And I'm going to point out some of the evidence that you could use, but I am not going to give you your analysis. I'm not going to give you your transition. You are just going to have to maybe even rewatch this video so that you can go through how I'm thinking. The purpose of doing these videos is so that you can re-listen and go through my thought process. You are hearing my active live thoughts as I am typing this. Most of this is not planned. Obviously, I did the research of the quote, and I did the research of Old Man Warner prior to discussing this with you. But this is really, you've heard my raw and clear thoughts, and you've watched how I'm processing it, how I'm talking it out, and then how I'm typing what I want to say and making it clear so that my reader understands. Again, you'll notice I went way beyond the 2 sentences here. This one, I went 4 sentences. I think in here I have about 5 or 6. So just keep that in mind as you're typing. There will be a body number 2 video, so please go ahead and watch that. Obviously, I don't think that will be posted for you just yet, but if it is, please watch it. If it's not, that means we're doing that another day. That being said, you are good to close this video out and continue working. Thanks.